EPS under 2 hours. We discussed pilot pay when a pilot is disrupted and is scheduled to return to base at the end of their OSP, but not more than 2 hours after. But frequently, a pilot is scheduled beyond his or her OSP in excess of 2 hours and even into the next day. In this case, the CBA provides additional compensation. In this episode of The Brief, we'll look at a pilot who is extended into the day following the end of their OSP. In this example, our pilot started out with a simple Boston-Tampa-Boston turn with a total credit for the day of 6 hours 14 minutes. As you can see, something happened in Tampa that caused this pairing to be extended. The Tampa to Tampa leg appears to be a gate return or another situation which prevented the flight from reaching Boston. As a result, the crew is assigned a layover in Tampa and fly back to Boston the next day. This triggers EPS as they are being extended beyond the footprint of their OSP. Further, this is a scheduled extension of 5 hours or more beyond their OSP, triggering the provisions of CBA Section 3H2. In this case, the pilot will be due EPS for the scheduled block of the flight home or 5 hours, whichever is greater, at 200%. So let's take a look at how this should appear in Rainmaker. First, the OSP had a value of 6 hours 14 minutes, Tampa to Boston as 3 hours 14 minutes, and Boston to Tampa as 3 hours, giving us 6 hours 14 minutes. Per CBA 3F, a disrupted pilot is paid on a segment-by-segment basis. The Boston-Tampa leg is already flown, giving a credit of 3 hours 24 minutes BLK-CR. So in this case, the Tampa-Boston leg is where our disruption begins. Under the column BLK-CR for block credit for the 8th of the month is where we see a total of 6 hours 7 minutes. This is the credit based on what actually operated up to the point of disruption, 3 hours 24 minutes plus 2 hours 43 minutes. Moving to the right, we see that the BLKPR or block protection column, here we have 17 minutes. This is how Rainmaker brings the pairing credit up to the OSP of 6 hours 24 minutes, as that is the higher and thus protected value of the segment. This will all be included in our normal pay hours on our pay stub. Now, let us take a look at how pay will work for the added duty period due to this disruption. Due to this disruption, we were modified to operate a Tampa-Boston leg the next day outside of our OSP. CBA 3H2 states that we will be paid at 200% for the flying being done on this new duty day. As our pilot is scheduled well beyond the 2 hours, they will be paid 200% for the greater of scheduled or block or 5 hours at 200% of their normal pay rate. This new leg shows a credit of 3 hours and 7 minutes, so we would expect to see 5 hours of pay at 200% on this day. As we can see in our example, Rainmaker shows 5 hours under the PREM column and 5 hours showing under the JRA column. As we mentioned in the previous video on EPS, this is done to account for some of the nuances in Rainmaker. The JRA column applies the 5 hours of credit at 50% of the normal pay rate, while the PREM column applies 5 hours of credit at 150%, the normal rate of pay. Combined, these two columns give our pilot the 5 hours at 200% that is due. These are both paid above any applicable monthly guarantee. If you have any questions about your credit, wait 48 hours after the pairing footprint is complete to allow crew pay time to review. Then begin with a Rainmaker comment to address the issue. If you do not receive a satisfactory answer or have further questions, please file a pay issue PDR with the Grievance Committee.